Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, the massive, mysterious cell phone outage, plus breaking news out of Iran, where the airspace has just closed and U.S. military bases prepare to evacuate. The deadly crackdown on demonstrators, thousands killed, and the regime is threatening mass executions of those pulled off the streets. An estimated 18,000 arrested or detained. President Trump tells protesters help is on the way without any details. Tonight, Denmark is deploying troops and military equipment to Greenland as President Trump builds his pressure campaign to make Greenland part of the U.S. A delegation from Greenland and Denmark meets with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The FBI executes a rare search warrant at the home of a reporter investigating an alleged leak of classified information.
The undocking burns 1 and 2, departure burns 0.
For the first time in the International Space Station's history, a mission is cut short due to a medical problem in orbit when 4 NASA astronauts will touch back down on Earth. The massive outage knocking out cell service for millions, blocking calls, including to 911. What may have caused it? And Paul Giamatti is planning to live long and prosper as the anti-hero in Star Trek's latest adventure. He talks to us about his role as a space pirate and his advice for actors on this year's Oscar campaign.
You look for things to keep you grounded because you can just start thinking, boy, I'm the most important person in the world.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're following several breaking news stories tonight, including the massive Verizon outages affecting customers across the country and tensions boiling over the president's demands to control Greenland. We asked Texas Senator Ted Cruz about that in just a few moments. But first, breaking news out of Iran tonight, where much of the country's airspace has been restricted as troops at the largest U.S. base in the Middle East have been warned to be ready to evacuate. The situation inside Iran deteriorated 24 hours after President Trump warned that the U.S. would take, quote, very strong action if Iran began executing jailed protesters. New images have rolled in, some of them disturbing. Iranian police seen storming a hospital on the hunt for injured protesters. And late today in the Oval Office, President Trump signaling whether military action is on the table. We'll speak to the director of Press Freedom Initiatives, who spent 544 days imprisoned in Iran. But first, ABC's chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell leads us off from the region again tonight.
Tonight, some American forces on the biggest U.S. base in the Middle East warned to be ready to evacuate. And late today, Iran closing its airspace amid soaring tensions. Just 24 hours ago, President Trump warning Iran the U.S. would take very strong action if they started executing jailed protesters. Late today, the president saying they've now heard from sources that Iran is holding off on the killings.
They've said the killing has stopped and the executions won't take place. There was supposed to be a lot of executions today.
The president signaling military action against Iran is on hold, at least for now.
We're going to watch and see what the process is, but we were given a very good statement by people that are aware of what's going on. We were just told no executions. I hope that's true. That's a big thing.
But on the ground in Iran, this is the terror ordinary Iranians have faced for almost 3 weeks. Security forces storming a hospital in Elam, hunting for injured protesters, seen in video circulating online. More than 2,600 people, unarmed civilians, have been ruthlessly killed, according to human rights activists. And publicly today, the regime suggesting it isn't backing down. State TV showing the head of the judiciary appearing to urge fast trials and executions of protesters. 26-year-old Irfan Sultani was one of those set to be executed today, according to his family. He's one of more than 18,000 arrested. Speaking to ABC News, his cousin Samaya saying Irfan always spoke about Iran's freedom. He always felt he should not stay silent, she says. He should stand among the people. Late today, his family telling ABC News they've just heard he wasn't executed today. But so far, they haven't been allowed to see him.
So some relief there. Ian Pannell joins us now. Ian, what's the outlook for these already deadly protests?
Yeah, I mean, it's a key question, really. How far is President Trump willing to go to ensure that this promise that he thinks he's been given by the Iranians, directly or indirectly, that they will stop the killing and stop the executions, what will he do to make sure that's enforced? I think if you're an Iranian, you've heard many things from President Trump, not least him urging Iranians to go out onto the streets, urging them to take over their institutions, and warning that those responsible for the violence will be held to account. Now, if you followed that logic, then perhaps people will go out onto the streets again. But that's going to be asking a lot of a regime that's repeatedly relied on the use of brutal and deadly force to quell any kind of opposition. If people go out again tomorrow and start protesting again, will the regime stand by? Will it not use violence? I think those are the questions we're going to have to look out for over the coming days. Lindsay?
Some big questions. Ian Pannell, our thanks to you. For more now, we're joined by Jason Rezaian. He's the director of Press Freedom Initiatives and a former Washington Post correspondent in Tehran. He spent 544 days imprisoned in Iran. In fact, your release was 10 years ago this week. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. In your op-ed in the Post, you say that you've been waiting for this electrifying moment in Iran for 10 years. What makes these protests different than the ones that have occurred in recent years?
What's been really interesting to me and what's different this time around is that the scope of these protests across the country is more varied and vast among different ethnic and religious groups, in rural communities as well as urban ones, among all socioeconomic classes, and the very clear call from protesters that they've had enough of this authoritarian state.
Have you been able to get in touch with anyone on the ground there in recent days? If so, what are they telling you?
Unfortunately, haven't been able to communicate directly with anybody inside Iran for a week. And that's a shocking thing in 2026. People have been taken almost completely off the global grid. And, you know, the fact that the regime is willing to do that gives you an indication of how big a threat they see this as. Iran is like any other country in the world that's heavily reliant on the internet for banking and all manner of businesses. All of that has been cut at a huge expense to the country's economy for over a week now. But the sporadic reports of people who've been able to connect through Starlink tell a grim tale of carnage in the streets, and you know, the use of military grade weaponry, the sort of weapons that you would use in a war on civilians protesting peacefully in the street. This is not new for this regime. Repression is part and parcel of how they've controlled the country for all of these years. They've never had to resort to such extreme violence, which is an indication of just how angry and how resilient and brave these protesters are.
You've stated before that Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah, isn't ready to lead the country. So if the Iranian regime were to fall, who would be ready to step in, and what would governance look like?
I don't think that there's a clear answer to who could or should step into that power gap. It's a fact that Reza Pahlavi's name has been chanted in these protests. Now, I don't think that means that he's qualified, and I think that there's some very real questions about his commitment to a democratic transition and what that would look like. I think what we need to be focusing on, rather than who the next leader of Iran would be, is how do we support these protesters and their very legitimate demands for a democratic transition. And we have really failed to help them in those efforts to this point.
Do you believe that protests in Iran alone can topple the regime, or would you like to see the United States intervene?
I think that depends on what intervention looks like. To me, the idea of military strikes on nuclear facilities or military positions inside Iran would not lead to anything more destabilizing than they're already experiencing. I think getting the country back online, being able to document what's happened in the last few days and creating a groundswell of support in the international community to hold these officials accountable is one big piece of what needs to happen here.
Jason Rezaian, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We move on now to President Trump's high-pressure campaign to make Greenland part of the U.S. At the White House today, a delegation from Greenland and Denmark met with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. At the same time, Denmark and Sweden have deployed troops and military equipment to Greenland. ABC's Mary Bruce reports from the White House.
Tonight, as President Trump escalates his push to take over Greenland, top officials from Greenland and Denmark traveling to Washington to plead their case to the Vice President and Secretary of State. But they emerged saying the two sides have a, quote, fundamental disagreement.
We didn't manage to change the American position. It's clear that the president has this wish of conquering over Greenland. We made it very, very clear that this is not in the interest of the kingdom.
Trump says the U.S. needs Greenland for national security and has not ruled out using military force to get it.
I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
Denmark, our NATO ally, says they're happy to work with the U.S. to bolster security in the region.
But that doesn't mean that we want to be owned by the United States.
A new poll shows 86% of voters, including 68% of Republicans, oppose using military force to seize Greenland. And as Trump ramps up his threats, Denmark now increasing their military presence in Greenland and asking other NATO allies to help. Sweden today also sending troops. Tonight, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell warning if the U.S. takes on a NATO ally, it would be incinerating the hard-won trust of loyal allies. But President Trump insists NATO would be stronger with Greenland, quote, in the hands of the United States, adding anything less than that is unacceptable.
And we'll see how it all works out. I think something will work out.
Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. Mary, a new NATO country is now stepping up to send military into Greenland. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, Lindsay, we have just learned a short while ago that France, at the request of Denmark, is now also sending military forces to Greenland. And again, President Trump argues this is all about national security. He says that Russia and China are poised to take Greenland, but the officials visiting here today said that is simply not true. They say they haven't seen a Chinese warship near Greenland in a decade. But tonight, Lindsay, both sides agreeing to keep talking.
Mary Bruce for us. Thanks so much, Mary. For more now, we're joined by the chair of the Senate Commerce Committee and also member of the Foreign Relations Committee, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz, thank you so much, as always, for your time. I want to start by playing what Senator Mitch McConnell had to say today about President Trump and his desire to acquire Greenland.
Following through on its provocation would be more disastrous for the president's legacy than withdrawing from Afghanistan was for his predecessor.
Do you agree with former Majority Leader McConnell? Would this be more disastrous for the president's legacy than Afghanistan was for Joe Biden?
Listen, I agree with President Trump that it is very much in America's national security interest and economic interest to acquire Greenland. Earlier this year, I chaired a hearing in the Senate Commerce Committee on the massive economic and national security advantages that would come from acquiring Greenland. On the economic side, there are very significant critical minerals and rare earth minerals in Greenland that would be very beneficial to the United States. And in terms of national security, Greenland has prime location right on the Arctic, and the Arctic is more and more becoming a theater of contention, particularly with Russia and with China. And the idea of acquiring land is not novel or outlandish. Throughout the history of the United States, we have done so.
Today, after meeting with top U.S. officials, including VP Vance, the Danish foreign minister said it's clear that the president has this wish of conquering over Greenland. NATO members are watching this all play out and are nervous about the U.S. stepping in militarily. Is there anything you can say to ease those concerns?
Well, listen, I've met with the Danish ambassadors and had this conversation directly, but the United States is not going to engage in military action against Greenland, and Secretary Rubio made that clear last Sunday on national television that what the administration is doing is engaged in diplomacy and negotiations with Denmark and with Greenland.
To Iran now, the U.S. is moving to evacuate some armed forces in the Middle East, and President Trump has said help is on the way and encouraged demonstrators to keep on protesting. He did say late today that the killings have stopped and there won't be any executions. Is there a red line the Iranian regime could cross with protesters where you feel it would be necessary for the U.S. to get involved in some way?
Well, listen, I will say what is happening in Iran right now is historic. It is profoundly consequential. I believe we could see the regime in Iran collapse within weeks and potentially even within days. We're seeing over 1 million Iranians rise up against the Ayatollah, rise up against the mullahs, and want to be free from their radical Islamist dictatorship. And I believe this was set in motion months ago when Iran lost the 12-day war. And listen, there are very real geopolitical consequences to losing a war. Everything is not just messaging and communication. Iran unequivocally, absolutely lost the war. And if there's anything worse for an Islamist dictator than losing a war, it's losing a war to Israel. And I will say to the people of Iran, President Trump has made this clear, I want to make this clear, the people of America stand with you. We are seeing incredibly courageous patriots standing up in Iran saying they want to be free. And there are very few things on planet Earth that would make America safer than seeing this radical Islamist regime overthrown by the Iranian people and no longer in a position to wage war on the United States of America.
Of course, we are just days away from Martin Luther King Day. President Trump has moved to say that it would no longer be a federal holiday going forward. In a recent New York Times interview, he said that civil rights led to white people being treated very badly. Do you agree?
Listen, Dr. King was one of the most extraordinary leaders ever to live in the United States and ever to live in the world. If you come to my office in the United States Senate, on the mantelpiece, I have three busts. I have a bust of Winston Churchill, I have a bust of Ronald Reagan, and I have a bust of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He spoke out against grotesque injustice. Many years I participated in a bipartisan practice of reading on the floor of the Senate Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail. And look, all of us have read that. We probably read it in school. But I'll tell you, it is very different when you read it out loud, when you hear the spoken words read out loud. And you know, a lot of people don't remember Dr. King wasn't just Dr. King. He was also Reverend King. He was a Christian pastor. And the letter from a Birmingham jail, many people don't remember to whom it is addressed. It is addressed to the pastors and clergy of America, and he's calling on faith leaders to stand up against bigotry and racial discrimination. And my favorite passage from that letter is when he calls on Christians to be a thermostat and not a thermometer. In other words, not just to reflect what is around us and broader culture, but instead to change it and imbue it with our values. And so, look, I'm proud to celebrate Dr. King's legacy. I agree with Dr. King that the arc of history is long, but that it bends towards justice.
Okay, so you disagree with the president?
I am a big fan of Dr. King, and I'm very glad that we celebrate his life and legacy fighting for equal rights for every American.
Senator Ted Cruz, appreciate you coming on the show as always.
Thank you.
A massive outage has been impacting millions of Verizon wireless customers across the country today. Customers unable to make or receive calls or access data. It's even impacting some people trying to call 911. ABC's Aaron Katersky has the latest on the country's largest cell phone service provider.
Tonight, tens of thousands of Verizon wireless customers can't make a phone call after a nationwide outage affecting voice and data service.
There's like a massive Verizon outage. My phone isn't working. My sister's phone isn't working.
Emergency alerts going out on social media urging those without service to find a different way to reach 911. In the last 24 hours, more than 1 million Verizon customers in New York, Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston, and elsewhere reported no service, seeing SOS instead of network bars on the corner of their phones. The outage appeared to reach its peak just after noon today. Verizon said, "We know this is a huge inconvenience," adding, "We understand the impact this has on your day and remain committed to resolving this as quickly as possible."
Verizon has not said, Linsey, what caused the outage. So far, though, law enforcement sources tell ABC News doesn't appear to be the result of any kind of a cyber attack, rather a problem with a server in New Jersey. Lindsay?
All right, Aaron Katursky for us. Thanks so much, Aaron. In Minneapolis, clashes between federal agents and protesters are creating tension. New images show violent scenes between ICE agents and demonstrators. So far, it's been calm, though, today as the community marks 1 week since Renee Good was shot and killed. ABC's Faith Abube on the ground in Minneapolis again.
Can you put the guns down? There's kids in this house.
Tonight, terrifying new video shows the view from inside an immigrant family's home after an ICE agent broke down the door with a battering ram.
Show the warrant first.
A woman telling agents they must show a warrant to enter Garrison Gibson's home. Gibson's lawyer says the 37-year-old is an immigrant from Liberia who fled civil war as a child. Gibson was facing removal due to a decade-old drug conviction, but had been checking in with authorities for years. Homeland Security says he has a lengthy rap sheet.
So if he's this dangerous person, then why are they letting him walk around?
Violent scenes playing out on a daily basis of agents pepper spraying people. This woman ripped from her car, pleading that she's disabled. Many, including influential podcaster Joe Rogan, are questioning the federal agents' tactics.
And then I can also see the point of view of the people that say, yeah, but you don't want militarized people in the streets just roaming around, snatching people up, many of which turn out to actually be U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to?
It's been 1 week since Renee Good was shot and killed by ICE agent Jonathan Ross, amid questions over whether the shooting was justified. Homeland Security officials and multiple sources tell ABC News that he was in fact injured, suffering internal bleeding in his torso, but they did not elaborate on the extent. Tonight, Renee Good's family issuing a new statement asking for privacy and thanking supporters, calling Renee the beautiful light of our family who brought joy to anyone she met.
Our thanks to Faith. Tonight, questions are being raised after the FBI executed a warrant to search the home of a Washington Post reporter. The search is linked to an investigation into a government contractor accused of taking classified documents. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, members of the media expressing deep concern after the FBI took the rare step of going to the home of a Washington Post reporter and confiscating her phone and other electronic devices. After early morning FBI search at the residence of reporter Hannah Nasonson, the Post issuing an urgent message to the staff. Quote, "This extraordinary aggressive action is deeply concerning and raises profound questions and concern around the constitutional protections for our work." But tonight, DOJ officials pushing back, claiming that the search was necessary because the reporter had received classified information from a government contractor who was arrested last week for the unlawful retention of national defense information. Justice Department official telling ABC News at the time of his arrest, Aurelio Luis Perez Lugones was communicating with the Washington Post reporter on his mobile device, and in the chat, there was classified information. Lindsay, Washington Post leaders say they were told that the newspaper and reporter were not targets of the investigation. But Lindsay, this action is so rare that a number of media experts are calling it an aggressive escalation and a threat to the free press.
Pierre, thank you. The Trump administration has closed more access to the U.S., indefinitely suspending immigrant visa processing for 75 countries starting next week. The State Department says it will pause processing until further notice, saying they are, quote, bringing an end to the abuse of America's immigration system. This move will keep immigrants who may require public assistance benefits out of the country. And this comes just months before the U.S. is set to co-host the 2026 World Cup. More than 500 million ticket requests have been submitted from fans around the globe. The full list of the 75 countries has not yet been released. Today, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton joined her husband, former President Bill Clinton's decision to not appear in a deposition about their relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Both were subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee. Today, committee chairman James Comer set a vote on a contempt resolution for next Wednesday.
We will mark up criminal contempt of Congress charges for both Clintons for defying a legal subpoena. Once it passes the committee, then it will go to the full House floor for a vote.
The Clintons fired back at Comer in a letter stating there is no plausible explanation for what you are doing other than partisan politics. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has announced the long-awaited second phase of the administration's 20-point Gaza peace plan. Phase 2 would involve a transitional Palestinian administration and the full demilitarization and reconstruction of Gaza. Our foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge joins us now with more. So, Tom, the demilitarization of Gaza seems to be the key bit here and surely the biggest challenge of Phase 2 of the deal.
Yeah, for sure, Lindsay. I mean, this is undoubtedly another critical phase for the US-led peace plan. I think it's fair to say that the initial phase went relatively smoothly. The ceasefire broadly held, and after Hamas almost immediately released all the living hostages back in October, the bodies of 27 of the 28 dead hostages have gradually been recovered. And as you say, the US is now focusing on the demilitarization of Gaza. In other words, the disarmament of Hamas. And a new technocratic Palestinian administration in Gaza will be key in achieving that, because many analysts believe Hamas will only hand over its remaining weapons to fellow Palestinians. Now, Trump envoy Steve Witkoff signaling that Phase 2 will also be about the reconstruction of Gaza, but warning that Hamas must fully comply with its obligations, including the return of the final deceased hostage, IDF soldier Major General Ran Gavili. Now, tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking with Gavili's family, saying the return of his body is still Israel's top priority. And Lindsay, it is noteworthy that today's announcement does not include any reference to progress in creating an international peacekeeping force for Gaza, which was also a key part of the Trump peace plan. The fact that the US and other mediators, Qatar, Turkey and Egypt, are focusing on demilitarizing the Strip first likely reflects the fact that Arab countries are only likely to deploy troops into Gaza when they are confident Hamas has disarmed. And that is still the critical hurdle that the US peace plan now needs to address. One Hamas official welcoming in broad terms the start of Phase 2, but the future for Gaza, Lindsay, is still uncertain.
Certainly is. All right. Tom Sufi-Burridge for us. Thanks so much, Tom. New testimony today in the double murder trial of a Virginia man accused of killing his wife and a stranger in an alleged plot to run away with his family's au pair. That au pair was back on the stand today. ABC's Mola Lingy has the latest.
Tonight, key testimony in the trial of a Virginia man accused in the double murder of his wife and a stranger as part of what prosecutors allege was an elaborate plot to avoid divorce and to run away with his au pair.
At that point, it was just get rid of Christine.
That au pair, Juliana Perez Magalis, testifying she was having an affair with her employer, Brendan Banfield, when he told her he wanted to get rid of his wife, Christine. Magalis agreeing to speak as part of a plea deal. Last year, pleading guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter, saying it was the right thing to do.
I just couldn't keep it to myself, the feeling of shame and guilt and sadness.
Prosecutors allege Brendan Banfield posed online as his wife to lure an unsuspecting man, Joseph Ryan, to the family home for sex in February 2023. Prosecutors say the husband then killed his wife and the man and attempted to frame him. Magalis and Banfield calling 911 and saying the man stabbed his wife, so he shot him.
There's somebody here. I shot him, but he stabbed her.
The police response caught on body camera. The au pair telling the same story.
He started stabbing her. I think Brendan shot him, and he asked me help to shot him too.
The au pair on the stand for 2 days, going into detail about the alleged crime.
I was able to see him stabbing her.
Did you stab Christine at all?
I did not.
Well, Lindsay, on cross-examination, the defense questioning the au pair's memory. Now, the husband has pleaded not guilty. His defense team arguing that it was his wife who lured that stranger to their home, Lindsay.
Mola, thank you. New government numbers show fewer Americans have signed up for Affordable Care Act health insurance plans this year. Around 800,000 fewer people have selected plans compared to a similar time last year. A 3.5% drop in total enrollment so far includes a decrease in both new consumers and existing ACA health plan holders. Declined enrollment also comes as Congress has been stuck in a partisan battle over the future of subsidies that expired at the start of the new year. In an interview published today in the New York Times, President Trump told reporters that he believed the civil rights protections that began in the 1960s were discriminatory to white men. And this follows efforts from top members of his administration, including the head of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, who are encouraging white men in particular to file claims of reverse discrimination with the government. While the president's comments were making their way around the world today, we were getting word of a sad update to a story we brought you late last year. Miss Walina Cannon was a civil rights activist who spoke to our Steve Osensami about efforts to overturn the Voting Rights Act of 1965, considered a landmark civil rights law that ended naked racism at the ballot box. We're expecting a decision on overturning the law from the U.S. Supreme Court any day now. Miss Cannon had a fist in the fight for civil rights. She went to college with a young Jesse Jackson and was arrested many a times for integrating lunch counters and fighting with election officials who were trying to keep Black Americans from voting. When we talked with her, she was dying of cancer and wanted to remind America why she felt that civil rights protections remain important. We went with her to vote for what she feared would be her last time.
What do you say to people who say, you know, the racism of yesterday isn't around anymore? This law was meant for a different time.
I say to people, this is taking you back. You're on your way back to no voting, period. And they're going back in stages to take this, less voting places and make it harder you. They don't say you can't vote, but they fix it where, in a lot of instances, you can't vote.
What is it when we do this story that you want me not to forget to tell America?
Is really tell people to try to surmount all the barriers, but they must vote and overcome all of that to vote. Otherwise, we're going backwards fast and helping them take us back.
On Saturday, her family tells us that the longtime civil rights activist died in her home in Greensboro, North Carolina. Pancreatic cancer ended her life. She was 85 years old. Her funeral will be held this weekend. Still ahead, the new images showing just how close police were to the Brown University shooter mere moments after he opened fire. And live long and prosper. The iconic science fiction franchise Star Trek has a new series. Emmy Award winner and Academy Award nominee Paul Giamatti is here to tell us all about it. But next, Houston, they're heading home. 4 astronauts started their mission back to Earth just hours ago. We take a look at this mission and its sudden end by the numbers. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 getting set to leave the International Space Station and return to Earth because of a medical issue involving one of its astronauts, which led to the agency to decide to bring the crew back earlier than expected. The crew is scheduled to splash down off the coast of California overnight. We'll speak with a doctor momentarily about this situation. But first, let's look at this mission and its sudden end by the numbers. The journey home comes 6 days after NASA announced the decision to bring the crew back early. It marks the first ever medical evacuation of the International Space Station, where people have worked and lived aboard for 25 years. The crew was involved in the 11th crew rotation of SpaceX's human space transportation system, according to NASA. Now the crew's 4 astronauts are on their way home after spending just over 5 months at the station, but with their time they are cut short around 1 month earlier than planned. 3 astronauts are still on board the ISS, with a new crew scheduled to arrive next month. NASA has not named the specific astronaut affected or provided details on the medical situation itself for privacy reasons. However, the agency has said the astronaut is in stable condition and that this was not an emergency evacuation. And for a perspective on this evacuation, we're joined now by space medicine researcher Dr. Farhan Asrar. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us. This is the first medical evacuation from the ISS, but will not be the first time an astronaut has dealt with some sort of ailment there. How would treatment normally work in those cases?
Yes, exactly. I mean, there have been a number of issues. Even they've been living there for several months. Some astronauts have even lived over a year, though, as well, in space. So you do get those usual ailments. Typically, the way that it works is that all astronauts are trained in order to address medical emergencies. Additionally, one of the crew members is designated a crew medical officer who is trained even further to handle any kind of like medical emergency or scenario. So they basically assess immediately what may have happened, whether that's an injury, whether someone's having some symptoms, and they would then connect with expert space physicians known as flight surgeons, who are medical doctors who are trained in the field of space medicine, to assess the situation and can also guide the astronauts on board. And this way, if they are able to address or handle the situation by, let's say, taking a medication or by just basically supporting the individual, just monitoring them, seeing how they've been doing, and it resolves, then great. And following that, I mean, they would also then just assess the situation in terms of, is it completely resolved, whether there might be anything else to do. In this scenario, also usually what happens is that if they haven't fully diagnosed the condition, or basically the condition might be something that requires an urgent further assessment or specialized assessment, which the ISS does not have, or even specialized management, they would then consider even an immediate deorbit if that was needed, but in this case, an evacuation.
So while we don't know what this medical issue was, I'm assuming that there is a general understanding of which conditions can be treated while still in space, and what would actually be the line that would have to be crossed in order to have the astronauts return to Earth.
Yes, that's definitely a great point. So typically, I think the main thing that we would see is that if there is a condition, I mean, it could be minor cuts and scrapes, headaches and stuff that could be resolved by taking a certain medication, or even stitches or something that might need to be applied, and it could completely resolve the situation. In terms of when something needs to be dealt or brought to Earth is usually in scenarios where the individual's health is of continued concern. So, for example, if the condition isn't resolved, or it may not be diagnosed exactly and it needs further assessment, or, for example, we know that if, let's say, the mission had continued, so if the treatment or management was not basically brought up at an earlier stage, could that have negatively impacted the astronauts' health, worsening the situation, or putting them at eventual risk, even if they're stable right now, but who knows 2 weeks later if something may have changed. So using these conditions where they need further assessment and management, which could not be provided at the ISS, and also that they could not, let's say, wait for an increased duration, so for the full duration of the mission, then basically they would consider immediately deorbiting, or in this case, taking a couple of days and then evacuating.
And just quickly before you go, what's next for these astronauts once they land back on Earth? Do they all need to then undergo any special testing?
Well, for all astronauts, because right now, I mean, they have been there for a number of months, and space does put a toll on our bodies. They're perfectly healthy individuals who have been tested, but we know that the strain of the environment of space, the radiation, the microgravity, just being away from Earth though as well, it puts a toll on the body. So all astronauts have deconditioned a bit. So once they'll be landing in on Earth, they would be assessed overall just in terms of how they're doing. Obviously, attention even to the individual that's having that medical concern, but all the astronauts themselves are medically assessed to see how are they doing, and then they go this whole recondition process where that they would then basically bring them back to their baseline over here.
Dr. Farhan Asrar, we thank you so much for your insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, part of an iconic California highway is set to finally open up again after being closed for 3 years. And the investigation into the deadly UPS plane crash in Louisville, we're now learning that there was a prior warning about an issue with the plane linked to the crash. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. As President Trump escalates his push to take over Greenland, top officials from Greenland and Denmark met with Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio in Washington today. The Danish foreign minister said the discussion was frank and constructive, but that fundamental disagreements remain. And as Trump ramps up his threats, Denmark is increasing its military presence in Greenland and asking other NATO allies to help. A major service outage is affecting thousands of Verizon customers. Sources tell ABC News the outage is not believed to be a cyber attack. Verizon says at least 175,000 customers are impacted across the country. They're working to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. A new report by the NTSB finds that more than a decade ago, Boeing warned about a troubled part eventually linked to the deadly UPS plane crash in Kentucky. Boeing told plane owners in 2011 about a broken part, but at the time, the plane maker did not believe it threatened safety. Investigators say they found signs of fatigue in a bearing assembly near the engine, which helps control movement. 15 people were killed in November when the plane crashed shortly after takeoff. And footage recently obtained by ABC News shows the moment that the man suspected of opening fire at Brown University walked away from the campus immediately following the deadly shooting. The footage was recorded by a university shuttle vehicle's dash cam. Moments later, police cars can be seen heading to the scene with emergency lights flashing. The suspect was later found dead by police after a days-long manhunt. And still ahead, a warning to chocolate lovers. The candy bar is being recalled over salmonella concerns. And registration is open for the 2028 LA Olympics ticket draw. What you need to know to snag a ticket next. Chocolate lovers, listen up. An unwelcome bear makes a return, and how you can nab LA 2028 Olympic tickets. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. The FDA has announced the recall of a specialty chocolate bar over concerns of a possible salmonella contamination. The recall impacts one lot of Spring and Mulberry's mint leaf date sweetened chocolate bars. The issue was discovered during routine testing by a third-party laboratory. The bars were sold nationwide and online since September 15th and packed in a teal box marked with the lot code 025255 found on the inner wrapper. No illnesses have been reported. Customers are urged to throw the product away and can request a refund by contacting the company. Civil rights activist Claudette Colvin, whose 1955 arrest for refusing to give up her seat on a segregated Montgomery, Alabama bus, has died. Colvin was just 15 years old when she violated segregation laws months before Rosa Parks' historic protest. Claudette's refusal to give up her seat helped spark the modern civil rights movement. She later became a key plaintiff in the landmark lawsuit that outlawed racial segregation on Montgomery's buses. She was 86 years old. Governor Newsom announced that a stretch of iconic highway in Big Sur will fully reopen 3 months ahead of schedule after being closed for over 3 years after landslides. Repairing the road proved a challenge, and crews used remotely controlled excavators to move materials on the extreme slopes. The scenic and winding road will now allow tourists to take a slower, more beautiful route between San Francisco and Los Angeles. A now infamous bear that made headlines after taking over the crawl space of a California home for months made residents under 2 more homes in the area. Now, officials with a conservation nonprofit shared that the bear went into the crawl space of another Altadena home after being evicted. He stayed there for 1 day before moving to a third home. The bear, named Yellow 21201, finally left after 3 days and has not returned, according to the nonprofit. As global warming accelerates glacier loss, a new ice sanctuary is opening in Antarctica. Scientists with the Ice Memory Foundation will store ice cores from endangered glaciers inside a storage cave built in the Arctic snow. The ice cores will hold data on past climate and atmospheric conditions, marking what scientists call the planet's frozen memory for future generations. Dozens of ice cores from all over the world are set to join the sanctuary in the coming years. And finally, if you're looking to snag some tickets to the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, now's your chance. Fans around the world can register for the ticket draw through March 18th. Registration is the first step to secure a time slot to purchase tickets, which can be done online. Participants will be entered into a ticket draw, randomly assigning time slots to purchase tickets throughout multiple future ticket drops. Single tickets will start at $28, with a variety of options available for individuals and groups interested in attending the 2028 Games. Coming up, actor Paul Giamatti joins us to talk about his new role in Star Trek Starfleet Academy and what it was like joining the iconic franchise. The iconic science fiction franchise, which dares to boldly go where no man has gone before, has a new series, Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Follows the adventures of a new class of Starfleet cadets. Emmy winner and Academy Award nominee Paul Giamatti guest stars in the series as Noose Braka, a half Klingon, half Tellarite anti-hero. Let's take a look.
So many things I didn't get to say when last we met. For instance, time, with its infinite sense of humor, will always fold upon itself like an origami chicken.
And joining us now is Mr. Paul Giamatti himself. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you played News Baraka. We just got a taste of him there. He's really this space pirate that really feels like kind of shut out from life and goes against everything that Starfleet represents.
That's right.
What made you want to join this famous franchise?
Well, I'm a big fan going way back, so there was that, you know. And then playing a bad guy, playing an alien bad guy was very satisfying to me. I like the makeup. I like that whole thing. Doing it with Holly Hunter was very tempting. All of it, there was a no-brainer to do it.
Your character is half Klingon, half Tellarite.
That's right.
Have you ever played anything quite so unusual?
I played a talking orangutan in a Planet of the Apes movie, but this is weirder. This is weirder, believe it or not. So I think, yes, this is the most unusual thing I've gotten to do so far.
And you have described your character as deliciously bad. Give us a sense of what it was like really leaning into the darker side of playing this villain.
Well, I don't get to play real bad guys a whole lot. I play sort of complicated jerks a lot. But this is a guy who really has it in for everybody and wants to destroy everything. So you're allowed a real latitude with that. You can go pretty far and be pretty hammy. It can get pretty big and theatrical with a guy like this.
Many people will remember, of course, your character in The Holdovers, and you had this lazy eye that you were really so committed to that even when you weren't on camera, you were still kind of walking around with
sure.
that. And here we really see a transformation as well. Give us a sense of how important that physical change is to really leaning into a character.
It's all, I mean, this stuff is a literal mask. You know, you wear this rubber stuff and it's you look completely, it makes you feel completely different head to toe. And then the costume's remarkable. You know, I have these incredible sort of steel plates on my hands, which make everything feel different. The boots, everything makes you move differently. Everything makes it just, it's a complete transformation they give you. So it's fantastic.
And we see the final
It
product
took
there.
about 2 hours. Yeah.
Oh, every time.
But that's actually pretty quick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. As you know, award season is upon us. The Academy Award nominees are coming out next week. You've been there twice.
Yes.
Any advice? Give us a sense of just like what this time is like in an actor's life.
That's interesting. It's pretty, nothing prepares you for it. It's pretty wild. I thought to myself, this is probably the closest I'll ever be on a political campaign in my life. It's intense and it's nonstop. It's kind of energizing. It's very exciting, you know, but you got to have the stamina to just deal with it every day, day after day after day. And you look for things to keep you grounded because you can just start thinking, boy, I'm the most important person in the world. And it's like, you know, you're not. And it's a wonderful thing. But it's intense. It's physically exhausting. That's the main thing I'd say is eat and sleep.
Okay. It's like having a baby.
Yes, totally. Hydrate. Yeah.
All right, Paul Giamatti, we thank you so much for the time. Star Trek Starfleet Academy premieres tomorrow, January 15th on Paramount+. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Good night.